Hello, dear polymer clay enthusiasts. My name is Mihaela, and as always, I'm very happy to provide you with fresh inspiration for your work with polymer clay. We are continuing our journey into faux techniques, and we are going on with the faux enamel. And this time we are going to achieve the faux enamel look using Pebeo Paints, Prisme and Moon. And we are going to apply these techniques to achieve a beautiful necklace put on memory wire. So for this project you are going to need polymer clay, which can be in fact the color of your choice, because we are using silver foil to decorate the face of the focal, and we are using mica powder on the back to have a nice back, a nice textured back. So I don't know, you can use other colors of clay if you want. You will need a flexible blade, tiny crystals if you want to have a little bit of sparkle, and you'll have the glittering part because the Pebeo paints are mica based paints, so you will have a little bit of glitter in the cabochon that's decorating the focals, memory wire, and there are some elements that are totally optional, like the dangle beads. Like the dangle bead, you can attach your central focal using a jump ring, and the little pearl bead, they are totally optional as well. You might want to consider leaving the memory wire to show in the final design, or you can make more Hishi beads and decorate the entire length of the memory wire with Hishi beads. So it's up to you. As I said, I'm working with the black polymer clay. I'm working with Cernit black polymer clay. I have conditioned the clay. I passed it through the thickest setting of my pasta machine, and then I made sure that I have a sheet of clay that has that is lengthy enough to allow me to cut 3 shapes for the 3 focals. I am using a cutter, but of course you can use a flexible blade or any other shape of cutter, any other cutter of any other shape. It's up to you. So I'm starting with the texturing of the polymer clay sheet, and this textured part is in fact going to be the back of the focal beads, and I'm using the back of the blade to make straight indentations into polymer clay. If you choose to use the blade, as I do, please be very careful not to hurt your hands or anything. You can use a long beading needle to do this part, or any other kind of object that allows you to make such straight lines, which can be horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. Then using silver powder or mica powder, I will roughly color the polymer clay. As you can see, I'm not paying attention to detail. I want a roughly colored look on the back of the bead. Then you flip the polymer clay sheet on the other side, and it's time to use the silver leaf to decorate this polymer clay sheet. This is very easy to do. You just have to put the silver sheet on top of the polymer clay sheet and then press it into the polymer clay using your fingers. And you use your fingers to remove the scrap silver clay that you will use for other projects, of course. I still have some polymer clay that I have to decorate, and I decided to use some scrap clay to do so, because as I said, at some point you will have to use scraps as well, and I can use them in this project because this is going to be the base of the focals, and normally you don't get to see much of the base, so it's okay to use scraps, but try to decorate the polymer clay as much as possible, and try not to have black areas in your work. If this happens, you can always use mica powder, silver mica powder, to color them. So I'm using rather free-form cutter, and I'm cutting out 3 shapes. And again, using the back of my blade, I'm texturing with straight horizontal lines. You can do this by using a wooden skewer or a long beady needle. Try not to push too hard into the clay. Try not to cut the clay. You just want to have a nice texture on the clay. And you have to do this 3 times if you are making 3 focals. As I said, if you are using the blade, the back of the blade, of course, be very careful not to hurt yourself. If necessary, you have to smooth the edges of the focals. I'm using a smaller petal cutter, and a round cutter, and I will make 3 cutout shapes that are going to decorate the focals. And I'm also using a longer sheet of polymer clay, on which I will apply another sheet of polymer clay to have a double thickness. If you remember, I conditioned the clay on the thickest setting, so after applying the second layer of polymer clay on top of the first, I will have a double thickness, a double sheet of polymer clay which was initially conditioned on the thickest setting of the pasta machine. I trim off the edges, and I am applying more silver leaf on top of the polymer clay. This time I suggest you use a silver leaf, not the scraps. You really want a nice look on the decorated polymer clay piece. So this is not a time to use scrap silver foil. And then, using the same rigid blade, you have to cut 2mm stripes. And we are going to use these stripes to decorate all around the, let's say, cabochons that are sitting on top of the focals. In order to attach the, let's say, cabochons or the cutout pieces to the base, I am using cat or liquid poly paste, poly clay. And then, as I said, I'm using the stripes to make a nice design around the cutout piece. The raw clay from the side of the stripe will naturally attach to the raw clay from the side of the cutout shape. But for the bottom, for the curled area, you will need to use some liquid poly clay to make sure that these curled areas, these curled parts are going to stick on your focal bead. So as you can see, I'm using a needle. You can use a skewer to curl the polymer clay stripe, and liquid poly clay to secure it to the base. Keep in mind that we are going to glue, after baking the beads, we are going to glue tiny crystals into these curled areas, so you have to allow to have enough space to do so, if you decide, of course, to add this element of design, which is optional. This design is inspired by a peacock design. I hope you can see this in the shape of the decoration. And you will have in the end two loops, two swirls on one side and two curls on the other side. No, 3 and 3. 3 curls on one side and 3 on the other side. and you'll have to repeat the process 2 times more if you want to have 3 focals for your finished necklace. It is very important to use the liquid poly clay, because if not, the raw polymer clay would not stick to the silver foil. I used the same kind of stripes, and I rolled between my fingers a tiny design that I am applying on top, above the cabochon, to make an interesting design, I would say. In the beginning of the tutorial, there was a photo with the sketch of the necklace in its initial form, and a photo with the final design, and you could see that there were a lot of differences between the sketched idea and the final look of the design. And for me, I start with an idea. The idea is in a way just to get me started, and then I am very flexible during the creative process, so I change my mind a lot. But I really wanted to attach this sketch to show you that an idea is sometimes just to get you started, and it is very possible that in the end you will have a very different result. But as long as you like the finished piece, it's okay. And I consider that flexibility and creativity go hand in hand. When you cut the silver polymer clay stripes, try to have stripes that are consistent in size, and this will ensure that you'll have a very nice looking design. So this is why I advise you to cut as much stripes as possible from the beginning, and you can estimate that you are going to use 6 for each focal, and you will use parts of the stripes to make the curled decoration on top of the cabochon. Of course, it is better to have 2 or 3 more stripes, because you might need them in case you cut too short a stripe and you cannot use it to decorate the project. So it's not a bad idea to have 2 or 3 extra ones to use them if necessary. And always keep in mind the fact that we are going to apply tiny crystals to decorate these areas. So try not to make the loops too small. And don't forget the tiny spirals that make a nice decoration for the focal. Keep in mind that you'll have to poke a hole above this spiral, so try to leave some space for you to be able to poke this hole before putting your polymer clay pieces into the oven. Or if you prefer to drill holes, you can drill such holes after baking your pieces, but anyway you will need that space to be able to make holes, and so to be able to attach your focal beads to the memory wire using jump rings. Next, I am using silver pigment to color the edges, and I am in the same time smoothing out the edges as well. If your edges are, if your polymer clay pieces are rough, you should smooth them first and then use your fingers to apply the mica powder to color them also. As I said, I am using a needle tool to poke holes, so I will be able to attach the focals to the memory wire necklace. Next, using the scrap clay, I will make some Hishi beads to decorate the necklace, and you can make more Hishi beads if you want to put them all around the memory wire, or less if you want to put them just between the focal beads. So you have to roll a thin or rather thin log of polymer clay. You'll have to decide how big you want your Hishi beads to be. So from time to time cut thin slices and check the size to see if this is the size you want for your Hishi beads. And when you are happy with the size of the beads, you can use silver foil, not scraps, but the entire foil, to decorate the log, to wrap the log in silver foil, and then cut thin slices that you are going to use to make the Hishi beads. So as I said, I'm wrapping the log in silver foil. It is very easy to use silver foil because it clings to the polymer clay. You only have to press slightly, and then you use your fingers to remove the excess silver foil. And of course, if you have little spots with no foil, you use the scraps to decorate that spots also. And then you'll use the same rigid blade to cut out tiny slices. And then it's up to you if you want to roll them between your fingers and make them rounder, or if you like them as they are cut out. Keep in mind that you are pressing with the blade on the clay, so there is going to be a slight distortion, but this could be nice. In case you want really round Hishi beads, then you'll have to bake the polymer clay log, and then when the polymer clay is still warm but not hot, so you don't burn your fingers, you will slice the beads with a rigid blade. As I said, after baking, while the polymer clay is still warm, so it's easy to cut it. And if you forgot to do this, or you couldn't do this while the polymer clay was warm, you can you have the possibility to put the log in the oven again for, I don't know, 10 minutes, maybe at a temperature that is smaller than the normal baking temperature, just to warm the beads. And then when they are warm but not burning, you use the rigid blade and cut out the nice round consistent in shape and form Hishi beads. But for this necklace I wanted free form Hishi beads. They were okay with me. Next, using a brush and silver pigment or mica, silver mica powder, you have to brush some mica powder or silver pigment in order to color the visible edges. So in the end, you should not have any black areas on your focal. You don't have to worry about the curled areas because we are going to glue tiny crystals inside, so you won't see the black polymer part because the tiny crystals will hide this part. Of course, after baking your polymer clay pieces and when they are and after cooling down, you'll have to apply a transparent varnish all over the piece and on the back as well, on the sides. And maybe you could consider applying a second layer of varnish to make sure that your jewelry pieces are well protected. I forgot to mention that after baking the pieces, you will have to apply varnish on the Hishi beads all around and on the sides, which are painted as you have seen with mica powder. So you'll have to protect the Hishi beads as well. And after applying the varnish, you should let them dry on the same skewer or beading needle or on the support on which you bake them. It's perfect to use the same thing to apply the varnish and then to let it dry. So as I said, we are going to decorate these pieces with tiny crystals, and I'm using weld bond adhesive to glue the crystals, and I'm using the back of a brush to push them into the curled areas. You don't have to worry about the weld bond glue because it dries clear, you won't see it, so it's a good idea to put enough of it and then to press the crystal into the glue and of course into the curled area. So I want to mention that at this point the focals are in fact baked. I baked them at the temperature recommended by the polymer clay manufacturer, and I baked them for 30 minutes because I'm using Cernit polymer clay. So after applying the mica powder on the focals and on the Hishi beads, you should put your focals and your Hishi beads into the oven for 30 minutes if you're using Cernit, for maybe 45 minutes if you're using a different brand of polymer clay. And then once they and after cooling down completely, you'll have to apply the transparent varnish on the front, on the back, on the sides of the focals, and on the all around the Hishi beads, and also on the sides. It's not a bad idea to use to put a second layer of varnish to make sure that your beads are really well protected. And once the varnish has dried, you can use well-bound glue to secure the tiny crystals on your focals. I colored the focals with Pebeo Paints, and this part is missing from the video because in fact I wasn't happy with the result, and we are going to color them again, and this time I'm trying to use contrasting colors because I didn't like the first version because I thought there was no contrast, and I wanted to have more contrast in the look of the focals. So because of the length of the video and because of the fact that this part is not really showing in the final design, I cut out the part when I colored the first time the focals. So as you can see, I'm using a needle tool. You can use a toothpick or a skewer, and I'm dropping the paint into the cabochon area. I used midnight blue. Try to keep your frames clean, and if necessary, use baby wipes to clean any spillages. And then I used antique pink as a contrasting color, a dark and a lighter color. So all you have to do is choose a color combination of two or more colors, and just drop the colors onto your frames. And it's up to you if you help them blend or if you try to put little dots to create an interesting design. Don't forget that you have to mix very well the Pebeo paints. Because while they are sitting in your drawer or on your working table, the mica and the mica colors and the solvent will split apart, so you'll have to mix very well the color and the solvent together to have a very nice look when you apply the color in your design. Next, I'm using turquoise Fantasy Moon. So I'm combining Fantasy Prisme and Pebeo Fantasy Prisme and Pebeo Fantasy Moon, because if I used only the prism, I would have a honeycomb effect on the finished pieces, and I wanted to avoid this. I didn't want it to have only the honeycomb effect. I wanted to have a less visible effect. As you can see, it is very easy to work with Pebeo Paints. You just have to drop the paint onto your pieces and allow for the colors to blend together, or even help them with your needle and push the colors in the places where you want it to be. I have also used a little bit of violet. I poured little drops of violet . And to make sure that there is that I will have a lot of contrast on the finished pieces, I used a little bit of carmine red. Then you'll have to allow for the paint to dry, so you'll have to leave the paint to dry for, I don't know, several hours. And of course, once the paint has dried, you can move on to the final step of the project, which is the assembly part. I cut out a length of memory wire, which I consider to be enough for the necklace. I cut a larger piece because I will make loops on the ends of the memory wire, so we have to keep this in mind when you are cutting your length of memory wire. And then I used a dangle bead and a jump ring to attach the central focal to the necklace. The dangle bead, as I said, is totally optional. You can attach the jump ring, you can put it directly on the memory wire. Then I put Hishi beads on each side of the central focal, and I decided to add little pearls because I thought they would go well with this design. And then using jump rings, I attached the other two focal beads, and I continued stringing pearl beads to cover the entire length of the memory wire. And then, as I said, I finished by making a loop using the round nose pliers. So I made a loop on each side of the necklace, and I used again jump rings to attach a toggle clasp. I'm making sure that the loops are very well closed and that the jump ring would not slide outside the loop. And I am attaching a beautiful toggle clasp to be able to wear the necklace. You have to make sure that you are able to close and open the toggle clasp. Of course, you can use any other kind of clasp. And after putting all the pieces together, after assembling the necklace, I decided that I wanted a little bit of emerald green to have a connection between the colors from the cabochons and the tiny green crystals. So I decided to add some more emerald green Pebeo paint on top of the painted design. And when you do this, you are able to get a very nice look, because the paint that you are applying on the second layer will not blend with the other colors, because the others are already dried, and so you can, let's say, control better the lines and the thing that and the design, because when you are working with Pebeo paints, there is not much control when applying the colors or the way they mix together. So by applying a second layer while the colors, the other colors are already dry, You can control the lines and the shape that you are drawing on top of the first layer. Thank you for watching my tutorial. I hope you liked it. I hope you'll find it inspiring. If so, please push the like button, and why not subscribe to learnpolymerclay.com for more inspiration with your work with polymer clay. You can also see me in the Polymer Clay Adventure 2017, and I can tell you that there are 24 amazing projects and that you will learn a lot of interesting techniques and amazing things from the teachers that are involved in this art retreat. Thank you, and stay tuned for more polymer clay tutorials.